So I will start with some of the history about SAF in India. Actually, in India, we started working on sustainable aviation fuel production at CSIR Indian Institute of Petroleum way back in 2008-9, when we had a lab scale process for making this aviation biofuel. It was a project concept at TRL level 1 and 2, and we very soon we scaled up this process to bench scale, and by year 2010-11 we were collaborating with Canada along with their universities as well as the engine manufacturers Pratt and Whitney, and we supplied them the fuel, about 600 liters of SAF to Pratt and Whitney, and they tested it and found it suitable for the aviation fuel application in around year 2010-11. And by that time we were sure that we have a technology which is a unique in terms, it is a single step technology which can produce sustainable aviation fuel in bulk scale, and it meets all the aviation fuel requirements. And we kept on improving our technology, and by 2015-16 we had a pilot scale demonstration for this technology, and this fuel was used to do the first sustainable aviation fuel powered flight in India between Dehradun and Delhi in year 2018. And in 2019 we are working along with the Indian Air Force, and we supplied our sustainable aviation fuel to Indian Air Force for testing in their AN-32 aircraft, and the first fly past on 26 January was done using that fuel with 10% blending. So we were able to supply this fuel for testing in aircrafts on different platforms, and we had a BIS recognition for this fuel in year 2019. And by 2011 we had a defense certification by the certifying organization called SEMILAC. And we were already having 2 pilot plants running, and the technology was running at TRL level 7. And now we were ready to go for the international approval by ASTM. So right now we are in the approval stage for this technology by ASTM in Tier 1 and Tier 2. And in very likelihood by the end of this year, this technology will be approved by ASTM for international usage. And this is the background of the first SAF flight in India, which was done with this fuel. It was Dehradun Delhi flight, which flew about 210 kilometers, and with 25% of biojet fuel blended with normal jet fuel. And also we did a lot of sorties with the Indian Defense on their AN-32 aircraft. They flew for nearly 65 hours using our fuel. And recently they did a 25-hour flight with the Dornier aircraft along with HAL. And as we established this technology, we were looking for someone to take it to the commercialization. And today, one of the refineries, MRPL ONGC, is setting up a plant along with the Engineers India Limited as the engineering partner for this technology. And with this background, I will go into the details of why we need to have sustainable aviation fuel. As we know very well that sustainable aviation fuel is required by International Civil Aviation Organization carbon offset scheme for international aviation, which is going through a pilot phase right now. So up to 2023, the pilot phase continues, and there are countries like Europe, mostly from Europe and America, which are volunteering, and they are using these sustainable aviation fuels. And the first phase also for the sustainable aviation fuel up to 2026 continues to be the voluntary phase. But after this voluntary phase, it will become mandatory for all these, most of the countries to look for the methods for reducing the aviation fuel emissions. And the net goal is that by 2030, we have to bring down our emissions to 80% of the level that was being emitted by year 2020. So considering that this SAF becomes a very important way of mitigating CO2 emission, and almost all countries across the globe are trying to set up plants for making these sustainable aviation fuels. And today, nearly 105 airports are distributing these sustainable aviation fuels, and there are 34 policies adopted or are under development for SAF. And nearly 46 billion liters of SAF have are under offtake agreements, and 11 approved conversion processes are already there, and 5 more conversion processes are under evaluation by ASTM. And nearly 42 feedstocks have been recognized under ICAO CORSIA system, and 211 facilities for SAF production has been announced globally, which have a total production capacity of nearly 73 billion liters. And nearly 51 feasibility studies have been done on sustainable aviation. So this is the scope of sustainable aviation fuel, and why there is so much talk about having more and more technologies, more and more ways of making sustainable aviation fuel. And because of that, there has been several existing as well as several announced SAF production capacities. You can see that most of these plants are situated either in United States or in Europe, because they were the early takers for this voluntary phase for the adoption of sustainable aviation fuel for CO2 emission reduction. But recently, countries like even Singapore, China, and even in South America, Mexico, they have announced SAF production facilities. But country like India is yet to have a SAF production facility as such. So today, with all those announced facilities have a capacity of nearly about 6.5 billion liters of SAF production. And if we look at the different technologies or pathways for producing sustainable aviation fuel, the major pathway or which has been adopted globally and which is commercially more competitive than other technologies is the HEFA pathway, which is hydroprocessed ester and fatty acids to produce sustainable aviation fuel. So CSIR-IP has its own technology for that at a pilot scale, which has been demonstrated on different aircrafts. Besides that, there are several commercial technologies available from different technology providers. In addition to that, there is technology using hydroprocessed fermented sugar, and also technology based on alcohol to jet, which was described in earlier session, and this technology belongs mostly to LanzaTech, Jevo, and Swedish biofuel, the technology which was described earlier. And other pathways are like hydrothermal liquefaction, even the Fischer-Tropsch pathway to making sustainable aviation fuel. But within all those technologies, when we look at the future of the technologies, it looks that HEFA pathway will continue to remain the major pathway for SAF production. And even the power to liquid is going to pick up after 2030 only, and but still the major amount of SAF will continue to be produced by HEFA pathway. And if we look at the demand for the SAF, it continues to increase by 2050. It will reach nearly about 600 million barrels. So when we compare the economics of different pathways, we find that this HEFA pathway always remains most cost competitive, and power to liquid, that is the e-fuel, has the best chance to become competitive with HEFA pathway, provided the renewable energy cost comes down by that time, and because everything is dependent on the cost of the power renewable energy that is used to produce hydrogen. And we find that in shorter terms, in 2020s, HEFA pathway will continue to be the major pathway for SAF production, and which is also economical compared to the alcohol to jet or Fischer-Tropsch or power to liquid pathways. And we did a kind of study on what is the impact of different components of this technology, especially when we focus on the HEFA production pathway for sustainable aviation fuel. We find that the major focus area is the feedstock. The price of the feedstock makes nearly 56% of the total cost of the HEFA production, while the hydrogen also makes nearly about 25% of the entire cost. So when there is a renewable hydrogen production with time and the cost of renewable hydrogen goes down, the HEFA pathway cost also goes down because of the reduction in the hydrogen cost. While the capex and opex form a very small chunk of the entire cost for the HEFA production, the major cost comes from the feedstock. So we need to look at the different ways where we can reduce the availability of feedstock, or where we can have cheaper ways of procuring this feedstock. And we find that in case of India, even though we think that used cooking oil, we feel there is a lack of availability, but different surveys have shown that nearly 2 million tons per annum of this non-edible oil is available, which is not a organized sector, or we are not able to collect right now. But it is nearly 10% of total edible oil consumed in India, and most of it either goes down the drain or it goes for the adulteration, which has its own health concerns. And the other possibility is the tree-borne oils, like we have nearly 400 species of different identified trees which grow wild. And we have been doing a large study along with Forest Research Institute of India. And we have been looking at the different species which are available, but the main reason why these seeds are not collected is because there is no demand or no incentive for the rural people who do those collections. So there is some potential in the tree-borne oils for production of the sustainable aviation fuel. In addition to that, we did a study along with Punjab Agricultural University, and we find that when we are looking at the short rotation crops like non-edible oil seeds which belong to your mustard seed family like camelina or carinata, it is possible to do multiple cropping and use this biofuel crop as a second or third crop. And it is possible to have additional income using this kind of biofuel crop plantation. In addition, when we combine, because these are short plants, it can be combined along with the photovoltaics, and the concept is called agri-photovoltaic, where you can have photovoltaic combined with the biofuel production, and it is possible to have better economics for your cultivation as well as renewable energy production. And I will go in more detail on the used cooking oil, because there has been lot of studies on looking at the availability of used cooking oil, how much is available, and what is the reason why we should look at used cooking oil. In fact, the government of India through FSSAI tried to educate the people on the issues with the used cooking oil. It is a major health concern in terms of causing several diseases, because it produces several undesirable compounds when we are reusing the cooking oil, in terms of producing different carcinogenic as well as different free radical kind of compounds in the used cooking oil. And if it comes into our cooking oil, it is a major issue. For example, if your used cooking oil comes along with your starchy food, there is a possibility of traces of acrylamide, which is a potential carcinogen. So India has been very proactive in that respect, and recently, in fact, Neste Oil did a study in 2022 on this used cooking oil, and it was found that most of this used cooking oil, in spite of FSSAI trying to regulate the used cooking oil going into supply chain, most of it in the metropolitan cities is going towards the consumption in the cooking oil. And it is strange that India being second largest consumer of vegetable oil, we do not have the amount of vegetable oil that coming out as waste, which means that most part of it is going towards adulteration. And I will compare this with the Chinese case. Today, China is the largest producer of used cooking oil as well as the consumer for it. And way back in 2000, we started our program on used cooking oil in maybe around 2018, and China started nearly 10 years back in around 2010. And since that program was started in 2010 about educating people, making legislations and ensuring that used cooking oil does not come into the food chain, China today collects and trades nearly 10 million metric tons per annum of used cooking oil. And what India started it in 2018, and FSSI itself did a survey along with a major oil company, and they found they came to the conclusion that about 23 million ton cooking oil is consumed, and there is a potential to recover about 3 million tons of this cooking oil. And compare this number with the China number, which is they are doing today is 10 million tons. So 3 million ton is a small number compared to the 10 million ton which already China is producing. So India does of course have potential up to 10 million ton. And we do a small calculation with the amount of jet fuel consumption in India, it is nearly about 10 million tons. And India used cooking oil potential, if even if we consider between 3 to 10 million metric tons, the overall SAF production using this used cooking oil can be between 1.5 to 5 million metric ton, which can be used for nearly up to 20 to 60% blend with jet fuel by year 2024-2029. That means that even the government has mandated for only 1% of blending. There is a huge potential for used cooking oil to have this blending up to 20% of SAF. And this gives a huge opportunity in terms of not only economics as well as for our own independence in terms of the fuel security for the country. And I will again go to this case of China, like most of, because of the no policy for using the used cooking oil, it was better for them to earn money by exporting. And US, because of its better tax incentives, it was importing nearly 50% of this used cooking oil from China. While Europe, which was earlier importing it, but they became apprehensive about Chinese used cooking oil because of the possibility of some kind of adulteration, and their import went down while the American import of used cooking oil from China went up. So basically what I want to emphasize here, that there is a potential for used cooking oil, but most of this oil, even today from India, the used cooking oil is getting exported to some of the major SAF producing companies in Europe. So we need to look at the potential for using this used cooking oil in India itself, and to make us more self-reliant on SAF production. And I will briefly go into the life cycle emission analysis, which is done by ICAO's CORSIA scheme. And what it shows, that even though we have different...
You can conclude within 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So if we look at the different kind of feedstocks, used cooking oil shows best core LCA value as well as indirect land usage value. That means you have maximum CO2 emission reduction if you are using your used cooking oil as the feedstock compared to the other kind of feedstocks like the edible oils, which we consider as edible oil, like soybean oil or rapeseed oil or palm oil, which are being used for this SAF production in the other countries. So I will not go into detail. This applies to other kind of feedstocks, and it looks that you have better CO2 emission reduction when you are using used cooking oil at the feedstock. And there is a lot of scope for improving the technology in terms of like using hydroprocessed vegetable oil. There is a scope for valorization of different kind of feedstock, having cheaper hydrogen. Even for alcohol to jet technology, there are possibilities of improving the technology by modifying the catalyst. In the Fischer-Tropsch technology, the same possibility exists. And similarly, in the power to liquid, the e-fuel technology also, to have better technologies and cheaper catalysts for hydrogen production through electrocatalyst has some of the potential. So I will just finish in 1 minute about our technology. It is from the CSIR-IAP, which is a unique technology. It is a single step technology, which is different from the other HEFA technologies in terms of it has the potential to become 100% drop-in, because we also produce aromatics in the process. So unlike other technologies which need to be blended up to 50%, this technology can be directly used 100% in the aircraft. And I will not go into the details. So these are some of the salient features of the technology. It is a single step technology. It does multiple reaction in a single reactor. It uses a non-noble metal based unique patented catalyst, and we are right now in the stage of implementing it in one of the refineries, while one more demonstration scale plant is expected to come up in around Mumbai area in the next year. So I think that is all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much.